I decided to go where no feminist has gone before and meet these men's rights activists.
Hey guys, it's Mighty Marie, and I'm here today to introduce a series of videos that I would like to make exploring the issues of feminism and the men's rights movement, where they coincide and where they have conflict. I'd like to make a number of videos exploring very specific topics. I have a list I'm going to read because there's no way I'm going to remember it all. The first one is parenting rights, bodily integrity, the theory of male disposability, rape culture, patriarchy theory, the earnings gap, and the mental health and homelessness crisis among men. Okay, so that's it. I'm putting the paper down. I'm going to try to do this notes-free. So, in order to have full disclosure and just tell you guys where I'm coming from so there's no confusion, I should probably say that I have self-identified as a feminist since I was about 10 years old. I did so in a family and in a community that was not friendly to that idea. Just a little bit of context without getting too personal. I was that girl who wasn't allowed to cut her hair. I showed up to college with hair that was past my rear end, but not quite to my knees. So that was where I was coming from. I had never heard of the men's rights movement until about 2 years ago. And at first, I have to admit, I was really skeptical. And when I first started to dig into it online, a lot of the language was very cringy. But the more that I engaged with the material and the more that I had conversations with people, the more I realized that there were some really legitimate points being made and some issues that needed to be addressed. Now, I guess the first question we're all wondering is it possible for feminists and men's rights activists to find any common ground? And I think the answer to that is yes. I believe that if you are a sane, stable person, ultimately the goal is a society where people have freedom of choice. And, where they're not constrained by extremely rigid, narrow gender roles. A society where a man or a woman can choose to stay home and take care of children without fear of ridicule. A society where we're not so boxed in trying to achieve these really archetypal sex-based images, the Superman for men and the Venus de Milo for women, or I guess that may be a Cosmo magazine cover these days, I don't know, but where we're not so boxed into that being the only acceptable way to be a man or a woman, that we have the freedom to live our lives. I think that's really kind of what we're all after. But there are a lot of barriers to the conversation. The first of which is that everybody's always screaming at each other and no one is listening.
Why are you making the allegation?
This is what MRAs are about.
To borrow a phrase you just used, the proof is in the pudding.
So you just want to sit there and talk over me? False rape accusations discredit rape victims, which reinforces rape culture, which is part of patriarchy.
If you go on to most any feminist website and look for a review of the recent Red Pill documentary, you will find that most people haven't even watched it. And if you question that, especially if it looks like you might be a dude, you'll just be shut down and shamed. There's no conversation happening. If you identify as a feminist and you try to engage men's rights activists critically, sometimes you're shut down and in really harsh terms that don't make room for a real honest dialogue or a fact-based conversation. I say a lot. It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna get some tea. So, interestingly, I think that there's a lot of room for common ground. Do I think that they're going to agree on everything? No, hell no. There's way too much diversity within both groups. Within the men's rights movement alone, you have traditional conservatives who really seek a return to a more gender-based division of labor. And On the other hand, you have men's rights advocates who seek a similar revolution among men as occurred in second wave feminism, where there's a lot of analysis of what society expects from you based on your gender, and a lot of soul searching about, well, what do you really want? On the other side of feminism, there are so many different subgroups of feminism that I couldn't begin to list them all unless you guys had like 2 hours to talk. There's a lot. And what's interesting is that a lot of the subgroups of feminism and the men's rights advocates face some of the same barriers to having a conversation. They are constantly shouted down and deplatformed, shamed for having the audacity to have an idea that makes somebody uncomfortable.
This is what men's rights look like! This is what men's rights look like! This is what men's rights look like!
This is a victory. Yeah, why are you so frightened of hearing an opinion different from your own?
No swerves, no turfs!
No fucking turfs in this fucking neighborhood!
With a moment of silence for all victims of violence.
You don't get to claim that. That's not your, those aren't your people to board.
So just
right?
a moment.
This is the people's filibuster. This is bullshit. You are not in favor of safety.
Right, so we're gonna civility.
We the people of Washington State will not tolerate our public resources being used to encourage harassment, discrimination, and violence. Right?
Now, adulthood is uncomfortable, but critical thinking is really uncomfortable. It's going to force you, if you're doing it right, to analyze some really long-held, deeply comforting lies and abandon them in favor of really uncomfortable truths. I think that in addition to maybe not screaming at each other so much and engaging in a fact-based conversation, a rational conversation and a respectful conversation, we've all just got to have a little bit of respect for where each other are coming from. I'm not going to question your internal motives or assume that you're part of some secret plot if you disagree with me. You're never going to hear me tell you to enjoy your cats when you're 80 because you're going to die alone. You're never going to hear me say, well, you only feel that way because you're insecure, because you have a little penis, you should probably get out of your mom's basement. If you present me with an argument, I'm going to engage the argument. I don't really have time or interest in attacking you as a human being. So if you are okay with being a little uncomfortable and really breaking down a lot of the presumptions that we have as a society about gender, if you're okay with really having your ideas questioned and sometimes being wrong, I'm okay with sometimes being wrong, then we can have a conversation. And that's really what I'm interested in. I don't presume to know everything, and I assume that in this process I'm going to learn some things. And my only goal is to engage with the material in a way that is rational and respectful. I hope that you will join me. And please, if you decide to join me, hit subscribe and leave a comment suggesting other topic ideas, because I'm very open to exploring other subjects. Thank you.